back to Pennsylvania. Took a couple of days to come home from trail days and had plenty of time to kind of chew on my experience, not only of trail days and having it be kind of a year reflection of being on trail at this time last year, but also my journey as a whole. And I wanted to share some of that with you. Finally had a moment to sit down and tell you about trail days. It was great. It really was. It was interesting to come to trail days as a through hiker-ish, right? I had been at trail days previous years, 5 or 6 times. And then last year coming through as a through hiker felt totally different. And then this year coming back was different as well, because when I was talking to people who had come up to the vendor booth those first few years, I had an idea, just an idea of what it was like to through hike. And then last year, I think I was just so overwhelmed. I had come off the trail after being sick, and I had taken those days off for gastritis, and then I had gone back to the trail, and then I had passed Damascus, and then my family came and picked me up. And as I mentioned, it's my brother's vendor booth. So, and then it was like a rush and resupplying, just like any other time, and getting back to trail. So this year coming and speaking to not only the current hikers and feeling very much jealous and that missing out feeling, but also to past hikers and being one of them, right? So everyone that came up to the vendor booth that had hiked in the past, for the first time, I got to say, yeah, me too. And that was pretty cool. Usually I just said, nah, my brother's sidekick, and I do backpacking, but I haven't hiked. I'm going to hike in a few years and that sort of thing. So the trail days itself is pretty amazing. It is historical. I'm sure you can Google and learn all about the history of spraying off the dirty hikers with the hoses for the hiker parade. I remember when I first heard about it on Backpacker Radio, it seemed like this huge thing. I was expecting this big stage and talent show and the parade and all of the things. And it's really, in my experience, it's a lot less than I thought it was going to be. Of course it is big. I mean, Tent City has, I don't know what it was this year, but has up to, 3,000, 4,000, I don't know, tenters and people in the woods and all of that. So there is that. And the vendor booths seem to get more and more each year. And I didn't spend the first few years in the hiker bubble. So I don't know about that. But this year I went to the library and I went to the rock school and it was wonderful to hear Tara Dower's presentation, and especially wonderful because that is the person that got me off trail, right? I don't know if I share that or not in my videos, but Tara's mom reached out to me, and I was struggling on trail with finding connection and community, and she had offered to take me out to lunch. And I got so sick that in the day prior to meeting, I said, instead of taking me to lunch, can you take me to a car rental place so that I can go home? And she said, don't go home. She said, I'll take you to a walk-in center. And if you need to go home, go home. And if you can rehab here, rehab here. And, I get tears in my eyes because that was really a turning point in my hike. I would have come home. And I know it's even harder to get back on trail once you get home. So those feelings arrived while I was at Trail Days because I got to see Tara's presentation. I got to give her mom a big hug and a big thank you. And so I was participating a little bit more in the hiker stuff, even though I was mostly focused on being a vendor. I walked in the parade. I walked around. I remembered so much. I remembered walking through there that day while I was actually hiking. And then I remember coming back from my resupply box at the Outfitters and going to the ATC and charging my device, and then forgetting like my iPod or my iPhone cord and having to go back. Like, I remembered so many details. And that was the other thing. When I saw the other hikers from last year, people that I had hiked with, details just started to come up, stories about going to shelters and in the rain and music and dancing and just story after story after story. So that was really, really fun. I'm trying to think of what else to tell you about trail days. I mean, trail days is just, you gotta go. You gotta go to experience it. The hiker feeds, the free showers, the free breakfast from the fire department, all the authors that are in the author's tent to share their book and their stories. A lot of the vendors are like town vendors, but there's all the gear vendors too, and they usually offer some sort of discount. There's all kinds of raffles that you can win as long as you're present. There is the grocery store, which I walked to and resupplied at. So I walked there again this year, just for old time's sake, and did some touring around town. I did a lot of shorts while I was there. I didn't do a full video. So this is kind of the recap of that. And then a recap of, not a recap, but a little information on my the things that I realized while I was there. One was I had just gone to the orthopedic surgeon, and although when I arrived at Trail Days, I was kind of anti-surgery, not thinking I wanted to do that. And by the end of Trail Days, I've decided that I am going to go through with surgery. Hopefully I can push it off till this fall. It seems to be the right thing for me. And the other things that happened were just a lot of sadness. Sadness is the right word, of not being able to get right back out there and hike and realize it's been so long. It was so wonderful to sleep outside. Oh, it was so wonderful to sleep outside. I just love the smell of my quilt. I know it's silly, but the smell of my quilt, the feel of my quilt. Oh, I got such great sleep, even though I was in my tent and not my hammock. I slept really well, even through the bands and the noise. It just is waking up, and the birds and the outside, and I just love that, and I miss that terribly. Real life is hard. Real life, it kind of sucks in a lot of ways, and I would love to find a way to get back to the trail in some capacity. Post-surgery, I guess. I won't be able to really carry a backpack, I don't think, a heavy one until then. I do have a second opinion, so I'm going to wait to hear about that, but I'm just not doing that yet. And continuing the rehab and recovery. I still have an appointment with a podiatrist for my foot. I have an MRI going on for my knee. One thing that I did share a bunch in conversation was my struggle to recover. It has almost been a year. And I know it happens to other people, but I don't see it. I don't see people talking about it. I have Googled it. I know it happens. But the extent of things, and I was a seasoned backpacker. I was in shape. I was hiking, 100 miles a month for 3 years leading up to my through hike, and I was in excellent shape. Maybe too good of shape. I mean, when I look at it, maybe that was it. Maybe I was already worn down and so forth with all the hiking and backpacking that I was doing. I don't know. I am getting to a point where I don't have to know, which is different because I've struggled so much to find out the why. And part of that is because if I find out the why, then I can not run into that same stumbling block next time. And I hope there is a next time. I am working, as I mentioned in one video, about creating a different lifestyle. I'm not going to go back to a 9 to 5. That's not the life for me right now. And so I'm continuing to teach yoga and offer holistic health services, counseling online and things like that. If you look at my profiles on social media, it looks like I'm rocking it, but I'm not. And so I'm continuing to look into other areas. I'm doing a 200-hour yoga teacher training this coming year. I'm doing my first yoga retreat, and that's in August. I'm excited about those. So I'm continuing to see what I can build in a not so normal lifestyle of just focusing on the basics. I don't need a lot. Obviously I carry 2 pair of underwear and 2 pair of socks and 1 pair of pants for the most part. And then in the summer, I even sent those home. So I had my shorts and that was it. And I could pull on my pajamas if I needed an extra layer and carried all my food. So that part is weird when I see, even on social media, being bombarded with all of the marketing or the stores. I went to a store getting some food on my way to trail days and just walking through the aisles of stuff, like all this stuff that we don't need. I don't need any of it. I don't need any of that stuff. And, one thing that doing the through hike did for me is also level out some of the extremes that I was doing when it came to nutrition and habit and all of that, because they were taken away. And one thing I did mention in my intentions for my hike was figuring out what of these habits that I had created over the past 20 years were still serving me. And the best way for me to figure that out was to take them away and see if I missed them. And some of the things I didn't miss. I didn't miss the rigidity that I had in the structure of the way way I did things and the rules that I had in place. I had a lot of rules, and I love that I'm able to bring a little bit more flexibility and nuance into my life and have the cake and eat it too, kind of, is to an extent. And then the part that I found that I brought back completely, and even then some, is my yoga practice. I dismissed it. It's something that it's the rock that I stand on, and it is so, so, so important. So that came back full swing, and I'm really glad about that. Yeah, so that's a wrap up of trail days. It was super fun. Can't wait to go again next year. So happy to see everyone. And now if I can just get back to hiking, that would be good.